The United Nations Security Council has tried to demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. But, no surprise, unfortunately, the US has vetoed it again for the sixth time since 2023, which unfortunately means that no immediate and unconditional ceasefire will be carried out in Gaza, at least from the perspective and the mandate of the UN Security Council. And this is very unfortunate. Obviously, nobody, almost nobody, thought that the US would certainly vote for it. Again, even though there are 15 UN Security Council members, 5 of them are permanent, including the US, still, almost nobody thought that they would vote in favor of a ceasefire, as they are backing Israel's policies when it comes to the nightmare that is provoking in Gaza. However, still is very, very atypical that for the sixth time the US is pursuing the same strategy when the international community is demanding a ceasefire, because it's pretty evident that it's becoming practically a genocide, as it was cataloged in that way by a UN inquiry of commission some days ago, and potentially by the International Court of Justice, who knows when, in a couple of years. But still, even if it's not a genocide, at very, very least it's a catastrophe, and the semantics do not matter that much anyways, because the suffering is very evident, and a ceasefire is needed now. And again, the international community is very, very, very stark about this, and they are having a clear positioning, and 14 of the 15 United Nations Security Council members voted for it. And we're not talking about some extraordinary demands. The demands are quite simple, and the positioning of the UN has been the same since the last months: a permanent and unconditional ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and the entry of humanitarian aid in Gaza, which is not that, let's call, crazy in international relations, and almost anyone could understand the draft. So why is this happening? Well, unfortunately, the US is still backing the strategy of Israel, and there's no way out, really. The only potential way out to end the conflict is if the US has a very strong position and completely changes the approach in the war, or better said, the conflict, because even though the attacks of Hamas in October in 2023 are not justifiable and they were terrible towards Israel, still Israel is the main driver of the war, especially now as it is virtually committing genocide in Gaza. So the US needs to completely change the approach, especially Israel. If the US does so, maybe it will end the war or the conflict in the short run in Israel. And obviously, this is a conflict that has been enduring for decades and will need many more years to end the conflict. But at the very least, a ceasefire is the first step. What can happen next week? Well, next week is the UN General Assembly. It's the 18th anniversary after 80 years of the Second World War. And for sure, there will be many speeches and perspectives and positions when it comes to states, and many will recognize the Palestinian state, but still, it's only a matter of advocacy and perhaps political relevance, but the ceasefire won't be conducted in the UN General Assembly because it's not in their legal mandate to do so. So still, even if the UN General Assembly becomes a place where most states decide to side on Gaza and Palestine, still the ceasefire won't be able to be carried out at very least in legal terms. But political terms do matter as well. And in this case, in the end, politics and not procedures will decide the final outcome. That's why we need to trust politics, international community. That's where our optimism comes from, really. Many nation states are deciding to pursue the strategy of recognizing Palestine. Obviously not recognizing Hamas, but rather the Palestinian Authority, the potential government that could rule in Gaza and West Bank as the Palestinian Authority, being recognized in the two-state solution, as has been proposed for so many decades by the United Nations Secretariat, the UN General Assembly, and the UN Secretary Council. And that might be the way forward. So it's still possible to end the suffering. Next week, we have a window of opportunity in the UN General Assembly, at very least politically speaking. And we just hope that this nightmare can be completely reversed and that one day people in Gaza, in Israel, in the Middle East, humanity as a whole, as a civilization, we can endure peace and prosperity, because yes, it's possible and it's a way forward that is still can be chosen by those actors that matter the most in this conflict, namely the US and Israel, among others. So hopefully you can find some optimism there. And if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, stay curious, enjoy life, and be the change you want to see in the world. See you in the next optimistic adventure.